Hi and welcome to vlog number 7. I was asked by Fishing TV to take part in a big event that they had planned, and I'd been working for them for 10 years. I did a couple of series, a couple of DVDs came out called Chili on Carp, which was a wonderful experience. Again, another effort by me to prove to everybody that I could do the same thing on every lake I ever fished and still catch carp, which those DVDs proved. And then one day I got a call from them and they were thinking of setting up a thing called World Fishing Day. What it did eventually was become a wonderful adventure for Lynn and I, and I'll come back to that in a second. The first thing was to get up to the Steve Wright radio show and do an interview with him a week before the event was about to go on air. The other real plus of the day was I met Matthew Wright for the first time. Some of you may remember him through the Wright stuff, and he's moved on from that since. And what an incredible man he was. Really enjoyed his company, and I hope one day we meet up again. He really was great company. Yeah, so the day was fantastic. Advertising the World Fishing Day, which was just meters from Tower Bridge. That was on the day of filming live. I did 2 segments on it during the day. One with Rob Hughes and the other one with Matthew Wright again. So the day was a brilliant day. Went around the world. There was all kinds of fishing going on, from South Africa to Norway and Iceland and a few places around the UK. It was a very special day, and something that was wonderful for me and Lynn to be involved with. She totally enjoyed the day out, and everybody loved meeting her, as people always do. But as always, we're chugging home on the train that night. I'm thinking about what kind of fishing I'm going to do, and I went back up to Hollybush, and again, that amazing water, pit 1 and 2 as it's called, threw up some fantastic fish. A 22-pound common that I'd never seen before, which was interesting, and a beautiful linear about the same size. I'd never seen those fish before, which makes my fishing that much more exciting. Eventually, I caught a very sought after fish, a fish that everybody thought had disappeared from that lake and wasn't. I don't think it had been caught for a couple of years. And it weighed 29 pounds and 10 ounces, just a couple ounces shy of my new life personal best, and it didn't matter at all. I'm never really that concerned about the weight of the fish. As long as they're well and they make me smile, that's all I'm really bothered about. And it was wonderful. My fishing was going really well. Of course, I was mobile by now in my little van, my little Astra van, Daisy as she's known, only called Daisy because it begins with D and reminds me to put diesel in her and not petrol. I had an event coming up that I was really looking forward to. And it was going to be up in Hertfordshire on Hook Lake, run by a very old friend of mine, Richard Stangram. He's been a carp fisher from forever. I first met him at Horton back in 1996, and I was looking forward to spending a bit of time with him. And the first thing we had to do, or my introduction to the lake, if you like, was to go up for a charity event. Lynn got up with me early in the morning. I had some toast and a cup of tea, and I prepared myself mentally for the drive. Eventually I got there, and it was the most amazing scenery. A typical farm sort of dug lake, a man-made dug lake. You have to go up to the dam end of it where the car park is, and I walked up a steep incline. It reminded me in a blink of an eye of Redmire Pool. I've only been to Redmar once, a place I promised I'd never go because I never really wanted to see it. I wanted it to live in my memories when I read about it as a kid. But I saw Redmar, fell in love with it, and as soon as I saw Hook Lake, I fell in love with it. And so much so, I've christened it Greenmire. And as I got to the top in the early light of dawn, a fish just head and shoulder right in the middle of the lake. I couldn't think of a better arrival. I got paired up with a guy called John Butcher, and it was very difficult to be sociable and all the rest of it to begin with, but you're allowed to wade on there, and I eventually thought that after all the fish had exited the little bay to my left, it'd be a good idea to go and have a wade around, which I did. It was a bit dicey in places, a very silty place. And I found a little spot that was about 6 to 9 inches deeper under a tree on the opposite bank. And it is minute little features like this on waters that are so small that can make all the difference. So I waded a hook bait out, normal bottom bait rig with a PVA bag on, you know, 6 inches of 20-pound dark camo tex and a size 7 short shanked hook, curved hook, and it just worked. I had 2 bites from under there during the course of this charity event, and that night I caught a couple from under my tree. And whilst I was there, I had a chat with Stan about how I got on a waiting list and became a member of it. And well, the long and the short of it, and it is very short, 5 minutes later I was a member. And I decided to go back the following week. I think it might have been slightly excessive what was said, but I was told a couple of times that no carp had ever been caught off the top out of there, or it hadn't happened for years. And during the charity event, all the fish had just gone out in the middle during the day and then sort of explored the margins at night. And I thought that they looked like a fair target for a mixer, to be honest with you. So I was back up there the following week. I set up in exactly the same swim again, to be honest with you, and that night I had another bite from my special little spot underneath that tree on the other side of the bay. Come the morning, and after I'd done the photographs of that fish, everything about being at Hook Lake became about catching one off the top. And I went round the other side of the lake later on that day, and I started putting out mixers and drifting them across the lake. And unbelievably, after about 3 hours of it, and I wasn't putting many, only 4 or 5 at a time, I had 2 fish came up and they started taking mixers. There wasn't the old Pac-Man effect. They were just gently taking the odd one off the top and almost inspecting every biscuit. It was so gentle the way they were taking it. It appears to be that way. But I kept on going, and it was literally 7 hours later before I got them feeding confidently enough, and there was 3 or 4 of them there by that time, to cast out my bubble float. And it soon became very, very obvious. It's like that spot I'd found on the bottom. It was so critical that I got a hook bait in there. I fished hook baits either side of it, never got a bite on them. It was only in that little spot on the bottom I got a bite. And it became critical that I got my hook bait to drift into one particular area that I was sure I was going to get a bite. They didn't really feed anywhere else. They'd come up and have a look and turn away. It wasn't until they got back in that area that they'd have a go at the mixers. And eventually, after a few casts, I got the drift in just about right. It drifted into the area and bang, what a spectacular looking fish. 24-12, and I remember that exactly simply because of how the fish looked. And it was just so typical of the fish I expected to catch from that lake. They do not, and I don't mind repeating this over and over again, have to be big fish to make you smile. It was the circumstances in which I caught it and the way that fish looked. It was spectacular. And I couldn't believe I'd caught one off the top, and all I wanted to do was catch another one. And the following day I did exactly the same thing, catching carp off the top where people thought that I couldn't. I caught another one off the bottom. I'd had 5 fish by that point. The following week I had a wonderful surprise. I was going up there with Brad and Harry from Fox to do some filming, some product stuff, and just to have a little filming of the fishing I was doing. And all I could think about all over again when I was driving up there was catching one off the top for the cameras. Now, when I tell you that this became a team effort, it just doesn't express it enough. Brad was on a camera following my hook bait around as much as he could. Harry was on a camera behind me with an overall picture of what was going on, telling me what the carp were doing at longer range. And again, it looked like there was only one area that you could get a bite from where those fish would feel strongly, and we did it for an awful long time. And while I was trying, every now and again Harry and Brad would go off and do some of the other stuff that they had to do and then come back while I was still messing about trying to get a bite. But eventually, with Brad zoned in right on the hook bait, a carp came up and away it went. It was the most spectacular thing. And to share it with a couple of guys from Fox was, whilst they were filming and we were actually working on the bank, was absolutely spectacular. It just, for me, it just emphasises the team that we've got at Fox and the way that we all work together. It was just fantastic. I think the mirror was about 18.5 pounds, and again, it didn't matter a jot what it weighed. I wouldn't have cared if it still had the yoke sack still attached to it. It was just fantastic to do it from a lake like that with people around me that I did. It was fantastic. But on the drive home from Hook Lake, I made the decision that I needed to go and see my mother. I hadn't seen her since well before the operation, and things are never like they seem. My operation and subsequent things that have been discovered and things that I have to deal with aren't what it seems to be. It's a lot different and a lot worse than I anticipated. The situation with Lynn has got worse and worse because she has been so poorly over the years. People just ignore the fact that she's survived all this cancer in several places, 2 strokes and registered blind, and all that treatment makes things happen within her body and things are coming to a head with her. And down in Plymouth, my mother, who has cancer herself, and a skin cancer, an MS, was struggling with my father, who was becoming more and more ill. And my father was eventually diagnosed with a very rare form of dementia and was put into a home about 6 weeks after I'd been operated on last year. And to tell you how harrowing that was for me, let alone the people that it's happening to, there aren't words to describe it. And me being unable to get to my mother was probably the worst emotion I've ever been through. And if I sound as if I'm filling up again, it's because I am. And Lynn will probably not like the fact that I've told you everything that's going on, but it helps me to deal with it, to talk about it. And so the following week, Lynn and I packed up the big yellow truck and we pointed her towards Plymouth. It was, I'm cool. It was the most amazing journey I've ever been on, I think. And I had to stop 6 times on the way down. Oh dear. But eventually I got to my mum, who lives in Glenholt, just outside of Plymouth. And as much as I'm shedding a tear now, which is out of pure happiness, we shed a hell of a lot more once I started to give her a cuddle. And you know, the three of us stood there in the hall for probably 20 minutes. It was just the most remarkable moment in my life, and I've had lots of them, but for me it was the most special moment I'll ever have in my life, with the two special women that any man could have in their lives. And yeah, it's so difficult to talk about. But I was there with my mum, and all I could think about, as much as I needed to go and see my dad, was to take her out, to have a bit of a laugh with my mum in Plymouth. And I got her into the front seat of my pickup truck, and we went on down to the Hoe, and we ate ice creams and had coffee down on the Hoe in Plymouth. And it was probably, yeah, it was just such a fantastic moment. I had to go and see my father in the end, which was a kind of frightening experience, because he doesn't know who anybody is anymore. He can hardly speak. He weighs 6.5 stone. And the life that he knew is over, unfortunately. But my mum has got to carry on. And as bad as it is for her, anything I can do to help, I will do. It was just an incredible thing, and I apologise for shedding a tear when I say it, but I'm not ashamed of that. It was the most incredible thing I've ever done. Full stop. And we had a great time down there for a few days, but obviously we had to come home. Lynn can't stay away for long because of her medical conditions, so I needed to get her home. But I'd been to see my mum, and everything after that didn't really matter. I decided the following week to go up to Hollybush, and to be honest with you, the trip to Plymouth was still affecting me. I still felt very weak, very tired. But as normal, I'm not going to go fishing if I can't do what I normally do. And I got to the lake at first light and set off for a walk around, and it didn't take me long to find some fish. A small little strip in the silt in amongst the weed, and I managed to get a couple of rods on it. Two little stiff link pop-ups that I've been using all the time, and it was good to go. And a lot of people always say you shouldn't put loads of bait in if you want to get a bite, you want to nick a bite, and all these sort of cheesy carpy sayings that I totally disagree with, because an hour later, over 3 key of bait and all the havoc that I'd caused over that spot, I got a bite. And what a stunning fish it was, a mid-20 scaly old fish, just the best way to start the session off. And in fact, if I'd have packed up a couple of days later and that had been the only fish I caught, then I'd have been happy. But the session got better and better, to be honest with you. No massive fish, but I caught some absolute stunners. There was a little linear, I don't know what it was, 15, 16 pound, and it was probably one of the most special fish I've ever seen. It looked like it had been carved from wood. Absolutely incredible. I caught one of the old girls from the lake as well at 27 pound. She looked totally spawned out, as a lot of them do, but she looked incredibly healthy. And the session was just an absolute buzz. I think I had 8 in the end. And packed up. I was supposed to be having a little bit of a rest near to home, but I was absolutely knackered by the time I packed up, and that's exactly what I want to be at the end of the session. But living only a mile from that lake, the run home was great, and I got some time to recover. But if the truth was known, all I could think about was the impending trip up to the Pads Lake at Yateley. We turned up at 9:30 on a Monday morning, and there was nobody on there. Nobody had fished it for a couple of days, which was just like music to my ears, to be honest with you. So I set myself up, found a lovely little run of silt. It was probably about 5 or 6 metres long, a couple of yards wide. And that's where I positioned 2 of my hook baits. And it was very, very quiet. until early the next morning. I had a £25 common, and shortly after that, that came from the marginal spot, actually, the one I fed in by hand. And a little while after that, one of the spots on my main baited area produced a bite, which was a £26 mirror. I could not have asked for more. A little while later on that afternoon, I had a £21 mirror, an absolute stunning fish. It was wonderful to be there. It was such a pleasant session. And I got a bite about an hour later. It got jammed up in some weed for a while, and Anthony walked round to give me a hand, and by which time I'd got it moving, and all I had to do was lead it into a net, which I was convinced it was a big 30. And Anthony hoisted it up, he did the lifting of the scales, and he read out the scales almost straight away. £40 and 7 ounces. But then we came up against a problem. I wanted to get some photographs of it, obviously I did, but it was in that half light of evening, and with all the excitement and everything, I managed to get a few photographs on my phone, but my camera, it just wouldn't focus. I got a Canon 70D, and it's all my fault. I would never have set it up properly. I know that I'm useless, utterly useless at that kind of thing, and all I wanted to do, I'd got a photograph, I looked at the back of my at the screen of my phone, I had to be happy with that, and I got her back in the water. She powered off. She hadn't been on the bank that long, and all of a sudden I was left on my own, and you know, I drifted off to sleep knowing that I'd caught a 40-pounder again. It was just a remarkable moment. But I slept and I woke up about 4:30 in the morning. I felt great. I decided to put the rods back out, flicked them out onto the spot, slackened the line off, and I was angling all over again. And do you know what? That is becoming something of a tactic for me that does produce fish. And unbelievably, about an hour and a half later, one of those rods on my big baited area in the silty strip ripped off, and I had a glorious £27 mirror. And that was the end of my trip there.